everyone. Today I invited 3 crafters with ADHD to talk about the subject of crafting with ADHD. Earlier this year I myself got diagnosed with ADHD, and while looking for things I recognized or things I resonated with, I found out that there's quite a lot of stuff that I resonate with on the crafting side. And talking with others about it made me realize that yes, there's a lot of stuff that resonates. So I invited these 3 other crafters to talk about the subject of crafting with ADHD today. For everyone that's new here, hi, I'm MarisArmoury. I do LARP, I do cosplay, I do sewing, I do leatherwork, I do a lot of stuff. As I said earlier, I got diagnosed with ADHD earlier this year. I'm currently unmedicated and not sure if I'm going to or not. Let's get to the introductions. Kayla.
Hi everyone, I'm Kayla with McNerdyMakes. You can find my channel on YouTube. I try to remember to post on Instagram once in a while. I do a little bit of everything on my channel. I'm part of the Society for Creative Anachronism, or the SCA. For those that don't know, it's an awesome group of people that are just passionate about history and recreation of the costumes and all sorts of other crafts. So that suits me perfectly because I don't have to stick to one thing. Yay! I do a little bit of everything, woodworking, metalworking, weaving. Most of my channel actually typically focuses on using recycled materials and things to cut the costs and help the environment. So that's a lot of fun. I've been living with diagnosed ADHD for about 8 years. I got diagnosed in college when I was kind of struggling with staying focused in class, and it's done me a world of good having the medication. So,
Nieske?
Hi, I'm Nieske. I'm from the Netherlands, and you can find me on Twitch at LadyNieske, where 3 days a week I will stream my crafting and chat incessantly at the camera. I mostly do crochet. It is really I use crochet as a sort of fidget toy, but then to make things. But I tend to refer to myself as a multi-crafter, as I also do calligraphy, embroidery, cross stitch, knitting. I tried my hand at quilting. The one behind me, technically not mine, but I love it too much. So yeah, and plushie making, and yeah, I do hobbies, lots of them. I was diagnosed about 8 years ago when I was in a burnout. Turns out there was an underlying reason for that, and I am medicated, and it takes the fuzz out of off of my brain. So yeah, that's.
Althea.
Hi, I'm AltheaRizzo, and I'm on YouTube under AltheaRizzo, where I talk about sewing and ADHD and historical costuming. I was diagnosed this last fall, and I am coming up on my 60th birthday in about 30 days. So I've spent 6 decades unmedicated, and I very much enjoy being able to focus and the focus that the medications give me. I am in the Society for Creative Anachronism. In fact, I did my doctoral research on the society and the Knights Regalia and how a made-up society creates made-up values and how those values influence the material culture that they value. And I also run a Facebook group called Sewing with ADHD, where we help each other out.
will you send me the link to your dissertation, by the way?
Yeah, happy to.
Then let's also start with, a relatively simple question, I suppose. How many projects do you work on at once?
All of them.
Yeah,
I tend to have multiple projects going along, but they're at different stages. So that, if I get bored with doing historical research, I can go do some sewing, or I can do some weaving. I can do some of the other things. It kind of helps me to get those dopamine hits when I need to have dopamine hits.
Yeah, I kind of tend to have a couple of smaller projects around a cross stitch so I can just fiddle with something while I'm watching TV. But a lot of my projects tend to be really big, but they have multiple different kinds of facets to them. So, for example, one I'm working on now has woodworking and metal and weaving and all sorts of stuff. A lot of research went into this too. And so I just kind of bounced back. You know what? The woodworking is ticking me off today. So I'm going to go sit and write on the research paper that I should have been working on the entire project. But I'm going to realistically cram it out 3 days before it's due and maybe have a B+ level of work attached to it.
I try to limit myself to one work in progress per craft. I cheat for crochet because I crochet for charity. So I always allow myself at least one charity project and one thing for myself. But of course I do have to be careful not to collect too many hobbies, because then the work in progress list grows. And for me it also helps. Most of my projects are really small, like 2 to 3 hours or something. So the dopamine rush of quickly finishing something.
Yeah, I tend to collect the bigger projects as well. I mean, most of my work is creating entire costumes, which I then mentally break down in smaller projects that have a set deadline. So, in a way, it's bigger and smaller projects at the same time. But I also try to always have multiple projects running next to each other. Also, like Kayla said, that if you get hung or stuck up on one bit, you can always hop onto the next project and hopefully have energy and feel like working on the other project at some other time when you're stuck on the other project again, and then the other thing does seem more interesting to work on. Aside from that, I also try always to have one project without a deadline, because I feel that having deadlines demotivates me at some point. So always just having something that I can casually pick up without having to think about to film it, because for me filming can also, because it's an extra step to getting to crafting, it's something that can also slightly demotivate me, but generally not too much. But always having a project you can just pick up and work on is really nice to have. This first question was a simpler, slightly more lighthearted question. Let's just also dive into the more serious question. We also had a question that was name an advantage and disadvantage to having ADHD and combine that with crafting.
For focus is good for activity, or it helps me get things done. But then that also kind of, Mom, we were supposed to have dinner 2 hours ago. Oh. My bad. But I feel like the hyper-focus can definitely be an advantage and a disadvantage. And the creativity that comes with that too, you get really passionate and excited about a project, as long as that can stick around. Because I do find that I lose motivation about halfway through when I start to get frustrated with the project. But
yeah, I recognize what you're saying. When I was diagnosed about 8 years ago, a lot of my friends that I hung out with at the time also got diagnosed with ADHD, and we jokingly started calling it creative people syndrome, because all the people who were super duper creative, like there was a whole writers group, and basically everybody had ADHD in there. It's like, so ADHD comes, in my opinion, with a lot of creativity. But yeah, like I tried to make crochet blankets. I just can't. I get frustrated after about 10 rows and chuck it aside and never pick it back up again. It's I get the enthusiasm to start projects, just not the enthusiasm to then finish them. It is annoying.
Yeah, and I have to really echo the hyper-focus as a positive and also a negative. I find myself needing to set a lot of timers when I start something that I'm really interested in. So the hyper-focus is one of the benefits. Another thing is my ability to quickly switch between things. I have a limited amount of time that I can spend, outside my day job on things. So it's very useful to be able to switch from historical research to, sewing to patterning. And one of the downsides to it really is that executive function, being able to actually start a thing, you have to do the thing, and it'll take you 5 minutes, but it really takes you 3 months to do that 5 minutes worth of work. And that to me is my killer right there. And I'm seeing all the nods because it's the struggle is real.
You should see my mending pile.
I find that I have my UFO pile is actually not that big because I am stubborn, and if I start something, I'm going to finish it. I mean, my UFO pile, I think the last thing that got added to it was 3 or 4 years ago. But the things that are in the UFO pile are never going to get finished. Yeah, but the mending pile is also starting to pile up. It's definitely relatable. And I mean, even if the task can sometimes be shorter than the time that you take to actually get started on the task. Yeah, it's a thing.
So building on the whole UFO thing, a few years ago, I had the standard ADHD UFO pile. And it was several bins of stuff and a couple of baskets. And I just took those bins and baskets to an SCA event and got rid of them. And that was probably the most freeing thing I did in regard to the UFO. Now, I have one UFO thing because that is a personal thing that I said that I would get to somebody, and haven't yet, but I'll get there someday. But I found that a lot of times just releasing those UFOs or the mending pile that you're never going to get to is super helpful.
Too, that making a plan to start a project at a certain time lets you really kind of think whether that project is worth adding to the lineup too. Because I do have quite a few things in my UFO bin, but it's all things that I got maybe a couple of hours of work into it and then lost motivation. So it's like, okay, maybe I really wasn't that passionate about it to begin with. So
yeah, what I find for me works to actually finish things is because all my stuff has deadlines. I only make stuff for events, so they all have deadlines and they all have to be finished at some point, which is also a great motivation. Same with YouTube. For me, it's a great motivation because I can say, okay, even though the event is 4 months out, I want my next video to be about this particular part of the costume, so I have to have it finished before then. And that way I can force myself deadlines, which on one hand gives me more stress to actually finish it, but on the other hand, I am finished nicely ahead of the event. It's...
Wait a minute. You're telling me you're not sewing on that thing 45 minutes after you should have been at the event parking lot in your car? What?
No, actually I'm not, and I have no idea how I'm actually managing to do that, but somehow I am.
Con crunch is a thing over all of the crafts.
Oh, that absolutely.
It is kind of stressful, though. I find when I put deadlines on myself, and, it helps me actually get the thing done, which is good. I need that pressure. But also, I tend to underestimate the amount of time things are going to take. And it does leave me a little bit stressed out. And so I do have things like you had said about, I'm cross-stitching right now. This has nothing to do with YouTube. It has nothing to do with the SCA. It's just fun to have something to get my mind off. But then I procrastinate doing the thing I should be doing for the deadline.
And for me, that other thing is oftentimes gardening, which don't have a YouTube channel for, or I don't have anything other than Mother Nature to set a deadline with. So that's kind of my cross stitch.
I think that's important, though, to have that where you can there's no rush. It's just zen. Because that's what I find I love the most about crafting is I can just zone off into space and just work with my hands. I like very repetitive work, but yeah, it can often be stressful if you're trying to work on a deadline and it's a very creative, fine thing where you need lots of detail too. So,
I find that if I don't have the motivation to finish something, I can use my Twitch channel actually as a motivation because at some point I was making an historical lace cap. That is super thin yarn that was a tiny needle, and then the pattern basically said, and now make about 100 bubble stitches. And I was like, fuck this. So I was like, oh no, I wanted to finish that cap, but I didn't want to make those bubble stitches or sit around doing that. So I turned on the camera and it was, hello, my Twitch viewers. You are now my emotional support system. You are now going to watch me make 100 bubble stitches and complain for 2 hours. Hello.
But the cap turned out really pretty.
It turned out amazing. I'm so happy I did it, but I was so glad that I could, turn on the camera because then at that moment people are live watching me. I have to be crafting because people are watching are coming in to watch me craft. I can't walk away from it now. I have to do it now.
I tried Twitch streaming because of that as well. It's a great motivator to just continue going. But then I realized my back doesn't like stitching for 2 hours straight, so I decided to quit that because not good for other reasons.
Yeah.
Yeah, doing the live stream is a great way to body double somebody. Yeah. Having somebody in a chat just sitting with you, they could be doing something totally irrelevant, but having that body double is another way of sort of tweaking our dopamine levels because we're kind of responsible to someone.
No, I think I'm relating to that. Some of the Discord servers that we're in, some of the costume Discords have the Stitch Prince channel, in which it's not a physical body double as far as video chat is. It's just text saying, hey, I'm going to work on this for the next 20 minutes, and then I'm going to take a break for 10 minutes. For me, that works great for video editing. Saying, hey, I'm going to video edit for the next 20 minutes, keep the screen up, make sure I don't leave that screen, because as soon as I leave that screen, I am going to Reddit and I'm going to get distracted. But just already saying to someone, I'm going to do this for the next X amount of time, for me is a great motivator to actually get it done.
Hold yourself accountable.
Yeah.
I'm the Arts and Sciences Minister for my barony in the SCA, and I just put forth an idea that I'm kind of excited about. So I want to get together a monthly Zoom meeting that gets everybody together. I'm like, I know every single one of you in this room has a pile of garb that you've been procrastinating mending. So that's what we're going to do is once a month, we're going to get together for an hour or two just to take care of the things that you don't want to do on a daily basis. Because I don't know, if you looked at the characteristics of the amount of people that are neurodivergent in the SCA or crafting in general, I think that the number is quite high. It's a nice escape form for a lot of people. So I think it's good to help hold people accountable for the things that they say they're going to finish mending. And it's like the hem that you based it up, that it's been like 3 years now and you haven't taken it back up yet. But semantics.
I think the Dutch crafting community is also very neurodiverse.
Yeah, I mean, we talked about, as in, I know Nieske personally from LARP events. I think we had this chat at LARP events. We actually looked around the room and we were like, most of the people here are neurodiverse, and most of them people actually talk about it. And I think that's another thing in the crafting spaces and LARP. People can be open about it, and people talk about it. Good example, last weekend we had a festival, and at some point someone sat there at the picnic table, and she just put all of the fidgets that she had on the table, and she was like, yeah, I collect fidgets, so there are many. And then at some point we were with 7 or 8 people just sitting there playing with fidgets, going like, oh, I like this one makes a nice pop sound, this one has a nice texture. And we had a great conversations about ADHD and, well, LARPing in that case. And yeah, people are just so open about it. I'm sometimes surprised.
Also, I wonder if people get diagnosed because they know so many people with the diagnoses and recognize themselves in it, and that an open community then creates a wait a second, I might have this.
In my case, it was.
Yeah.
I was already thinking for quite a while, should I get diagnosed or not? These things that I have trouble with, can they be ADHD or not? And it was actually a talk at a LARP event with someone that says, well, I find ADHD correlates a lot with X. And I said, oh, I also have that. And we had more chats about ADHD, and she said, well, if you're thinking about it, just do it. And that was basically the last push that I needed to actually call the doctor and say, hey, I want to get diagnosed.
Yeah, I got diagnosed because I was already getting treatment for a burnout, and then a friend of mine got diagnosed with ADHD, and she sent me a list of, common traits, and I was basically going through that going, yes, heck yeah, oh yeah, oh. And I took the list to my psychologist, and I said, do you think I might have ADHD? And she was like, let's get you started on that.
I think that's one of the importance of panels like this one and what we do in our channels is talking about our own struggles with ADHD to make it more okay for other people to even acknowledge that they might have ADHD, because mental health for so long has been so taboo. And I think that if we see the representation in on YouTube and in our social media and in our friends groups, I think that gives people permission to explore getting help for themselves.
Yeah, I didn't know anybody with ADHD at the time. I've since made quite a few friends with ADHD, but I was having trouble focusing in college. And at first I thought it was just that there was no way to learn anything in an 8 a.m. U.S. history class through one bleary, bloodshot eye that you're keeping open. I was also a parent and also working full time at the time. But the more I continued to struggle, I'm like, wow, I need to maybe talk to a doctor about anything that might help. Because, I tried diet, exercise, waking up early, and that was miserable. And just trying to alter my lifestyle. And when all of those changes didn't make a difference, it's crazy. You could see, because it was the first class of the day, I would take my medication on my way to school so I wouldn't forget. And so I'd walk out the door and I'd keep my medication in my purse. And you could see when it would start to kick in, my notes would be all like chicken scratchy. And then by the end of my notes, they were like pristine and perfect and bulleted and actually labeled in a way that they should have been, because I was focusing and paying attention. So,
well, that's a really, really clear one, because usually people start out really neat and then end up all scratchy because all of the writing.
It's messy by people's standards, but it looks nicer from the top to the bottom.
I think a nice next question, because, well, we're crafters, we always talk about this. How do you organize your craft space? Or not is also an answer.
There behind me, you can just see my IKEA calyx closet. That is basically, I have one bin for yarn that is safe for the charity, because they require special yarn that needs to be washed at certain temperatures. Then there's one bin for other yarn and 6 bins for whatever. Organized chaos. And what you cannot see is that my desk is covered in yarn right now and some half-finished projects. I try to keep my desk clean, but I swear, at night the clutter marches out of the closet and comes back onto the desk. It's the only explanation I have.
I try to keep my space as clean as possible, and my stuff as lean as possible, because I know myself. If I let it get too overwhelming, I shut down and I can't do anything. So I do try really hard to keep limits on the number of hobbies that I'm working on and have the supplies and tools for, and just the space that the thing takes up. So I have a closet that I keep my fabric in, and I, a few years ago, gave away like 30 bins of fabric. And I'm old, so I had a long time to accumulate. But I found that getting rid of stuff is the best mental health thing that I did for myself, was to clean that out. And I have my sewing table right here, which is part of my kids' old bunk beds that I just put a sheet of plywood on. I have 3 sewing machines and a serger. And then back here, I have my printer and my Cricut, and I limit myself to one sort of wardrobe of non-sewing related hobby supplies. And don't open those doors because it's chock full. So I do try to keep it organized a little bit. Right now, I have it background blurred out because I'm in the middle of some projects, and so it's a little bit, and so it does go, but I do try to get it back to the non-tornado looking every once in a while.
Yeah, for me right now, I just moved, which is kind of like, okay, everything's a disaster right now. It's not just my craft room. But I built, I don't know if anybody watches the channel. I know, Mariska, you were there for me building my sewing room.
It was amazing.
Thank you. I found that giving myself an inspiring place to work and something that was pretty meant that I wanted to keep it clean. And so I got into the habit of, so if I worked a couple of hours the night before the next time that I work, I just tidy up. I just spend a few minutes putting tools back. Because it's like, I don't know about you guys, but like, you'll use the sewing scissors, you'll set them someplace, and then you'll turn around and be like, okay, I've literally just had these. Where did they go? And then you have to spend like 10 minutes lifting up things, trying, like, I swear I just had these. I'm like losing my mind. And then you just kind of lose your focus and your passion and creativity in that moment. It's like, yeah, forget it. I'm not even about that life today.
I am in this picture and I do not like it.
Yeah, just the cleaning up really helps try to keep on top of the mess. Labeling things helps too. It was kind of an extravagant purchase as far as purchases go, but I bought kind of an expensive label maker, and everybody's like, you spent that much on the label maker? I'm like, dude, no, it has like 15 different fonts, one of them being medieval script. And like, okay, it's got more than 15, but I mean, it's just such a simple little thing that brings you joy. It's like, man, that's the coolest thing ever, and it encourages me to actually label things, and I'm like, oh, okay, well now I want to put things in the boxes that I labeled, and go get more boxes.
Clear containers are your friend, because object permanence is an issue, you know. It's like those scissors. You set them down, and it's like, where did you set them down? So we end up with, 6 pairs of scissors or tools.
Where are they? I don't know. I couldn't even tell you.
For me, it's a bit weird, because I also have the when I'm actively working with things and just putting stuff down mindlessly, I can't find it. But when I take a day to actually organize my stuff, if you ask me where some obscure part of the stuff that I inherited from my grandma is, I can find it exactly in the closet. I know where everything is. As soon as I start cleaning up, then I can't find anything, because then I moved everything, and I should not clean up. Then everything goes wrong. But no, well, this is my craft room, and next to this I got a sort of walk-in closet where all my stuff is. And I don't know, it kind of got an organical... For me, it makes sense how everything is organized, say it like that. And I mean, it's always a chaos here. The table is full of stuff behind this mannequin. I just put it there to... Well, that's cleaned up. But yeah, I like a creative mess. If I see stuff, I feel like picking it up and doing something with it, rather than when everything is clean. However, I must say, when I'm done with a project, I can also really enjoy getting everything clean before starting a next one. For me, it's also, I think mentally, maybe just cleaning up entirely. I don't just clear out the table. No, I start to vacuum my entire room, because, I don't know, that's part of the process.
I'm so bad at that. Like, I still have bits of like 3 or 4 projects past that I'm like... Low-key off the ADHD thing, I think it's really important to have a separate space from the house, if possible. Obviously, I know that's not within everybody's realm of possibility, or even just a separate room that's way away from the main area. Having a place where it's like, okay, this is work mode, and then home life, so that way I don't work well into dinner time.
Yeah, I kind of understand. Like, this used to be one of our, we store our LARP tents here, rooms. And we started cleaning it out at some point because our house was getting renovated. And at that point, the lockdown and everything happened. And I was like, I need a home office. And now I no longer work from home, because I do like working in my office better. But I now use it as my Twitch and craft room, and I love it. Just to have my own little crafty space.
Yep, when we saw this house, I was like, I'm claiming that room. But then again, before this, we already had a 2-bedroom apartment, and I claimed one of them. So, yeah. The next question I have written down is, how do you deal with distractions while crafting?
I let my family know when I'm going to be filming. Like, if I have something specific, there's parts of the project where, for YouTube in particular, that it's important for quiet to be a thing. And I have children. I don't know if anybody else has that, because it never fails. Anytime I turn the camera on, it's like everything was dead quiet right before, and then as soon as you turn the camera on, suddenly the dog needs to go outside, and the cats start messing with everything, and the children demand attention, and so I try to have dedicated time where I let everybody know ahead of time, hey, between this time and this time is quiet time, and I will not be bothered, please, unless it's an emergency. Of course, if the house is on fire, please let me know, but Having that dedicated time helps keep me from getting frustrated, because I get frustrated when I get interrupted. You get in the zone of that hyper focus and you're trying to get things done, and especially if you've got a deadline, it can be a little bit frustrating to be interrupted. But as far as distractions go, it's mainly external. There's not really a whole lot of distractions that I encounter other than that.
I mean, for me, I guess what helps is because I stream a lot on Twitch, it's live, there's people watching. So, indeed, unless it's an emergency, I cannot get distracted while being live, because then, people from America and Australia, and they come from all over the world. It's kind of cool. But, yeah, we'll suddenly be left with a blank screen. And, and when not streaming, how do I deal with distractions? Badly.
That's an answer.
This is one of the reasons why I love crochet, because crochet is very forgiving for me. Because I work with relatively stiff cotton yarn. So I can just make the loop a little bit bigger, put it down, and walk away. There is no... I do not get punished. Like, I've had moments when I tried knitting, and then I got distracted, and the needle fell out, and then you have to pick up 72 stitches again. Crochet is very forgiving for, I do 2 stitches and I get distracted, and then I do 5 rows and then I get distracted. Some crafts are really good for picking up for 5 minutes and then putting back down again.
Oh, I really like your mug. It's amazing.
Yeah, so it says, I like big balls and I cannot lie.
I think tablet weaving is one I had trouble setting down and then picking up, because ultimately my pattern would disappear, or I have cats. And it only takes once for you leaving the loom out and then realizing that, oh crap, now I gotta start all the way over, because somehow, some way, or children coming up and like, ooh, what's this thing? So I have a special little shelf that's way high up where the animals and the children can't get, that I put my in-progress tablet weaving I've been working on like for 6 months now. I've been working on a brocade weave, and it is taking forever. So that's kind of my, if I've got, if I need something to fiddle with my hands, and I'm not doing cross stitch, it's helpful.
For me, because I'm lucky enough to have like a separate space for my sewing, the only time I listen to Terry Pratchett books on tape is when I'm doing my sewing. So it's kind of like, well, if I want to listen to a story, I have to go do sewing. and that kind of keeps me motivated to get more sewing done. I've been really enjoying the new releases, the new recordings that they've put out. When it comes to like doing historical research online and that kind of thing, that's where I have more of a problem. In staying focused is when I have an electronic device in front of me and I'm trying to do something, and I get, I need to go buy a fabric to do this one project, so I'm herring off to do some research on finding a blue wool for a knighting tunic, and then I need to, I have this video coming up on Merovingian textiles. Have I read that article yet? I don't think I've read that article yet. So I go find that article, and so it's harder for me to stay focused, and it's just a matter of knowing that each day is a reset, and I will have a better chance of staying focused tomorrow, and hopefully I do better. And that's all you can really do, is not beat yourself up for what you can't do, but celebrate what you can do, and not try to dwell on the difficulties, but on your successes.
For me, it's a love-hate relationship with Discord. I really like chatting to people, but the notifications, and if I just see a chat unread, I have to read it, and then I want to interact, and there goes my focus. But it's kind of similar with you, Althea, with the audiobooks. If I am like, okay, I really want to get started on a project now, especially if it's something that I have to do on the table for a bit, measuring, sewing, I put on music. I can get a lot of energy out of energizing music. There is a reason I really like to listen to metal while I'm working. it gives me energy and I work. And it's also, I don't know, the music in a way is a distraction, but it distracts me well enough that I can focus on what I'm doing. It always feels really weird to say that, but I think that's one of the main reasons why I like metal, because there's so much going on that it's a nice distraction, but not too distracting in a way.
I recognize what you're saying. I remember at school people going, no, it needs to be quiet when you're doing your homework. But when it's quiet, my brain starts making noise because it's quiet. Mm-hmm. And the music is like a fidget for your brain, at least for me. For me, it's like things like historical documentaries or cooking shows. I'm a programmer for my day job, and I cannot program in silence. I need silly cooking shows, random history documentaries, stuff like that, just to fill a baseline of noise. But it's a nice constant noise that I don't really have to concentrate to, but just enough to fill a sort of background murmur.
I'll typically pick like that I've seen a million times before, like a TV series that I know how it ends, and so I'm not likely to get wrapped up into the story and get distracted. Typically for me, it's like BBC's TV show Merlin. That's a big one that I watch over and over again. That or Supernatural. I've watched the series over again a couple of times, and it's just, I know how it ends, and typically I always run into something like an episode that I'd fallen asleep during at some point. It's like, oh, I don't remember this part. That's kind of cool, but not enough to distract me from what it is that I'm doing. So
yeah, I like to watch a lot of anime, and with that it works slightly less because you're always reading the subtitles. Except for me with Ouran High School, I am still not using the dub. I'm watching the sub, but I've seen that series so often that I can just recognize. I don't speak Japanese, yet I've listened to it often enough that I know what they're saying without reading the subtitles. So I can just put on that series and just go. But for me, with work, if I have to work on something with text, it doesn't work if I have music with lyrics that I know, because then I'm trying to either sing in my head or actually sing out loud with the lyrics. For work, I listen to a lot of what Spotify's called, I think it's called Dark Northern. It's like Scandinavian folk music kind of stuff. It's language that I don't understand. It's really low, as in low frequency music, so it's a nice drone in the background, basically. Or noisemakers. MyNoise.net, those noise machines are so nice.
Yeah, if I have to deal with writing words or editing words or anything like that, I can't have any music with lyrics. And that's why I use a lot of movie soundtracks. Like I have a Pandora station that's based on Lord of the Rings soundtrack. And so I get a lot of Avengers music. And my favorite currently is the Wonder Woman theme, where it's kind of a driving bass there. But a lot of the northern folk music is sort of seeping into it, which I really like. I don't know how to pronounce a lot of the band names, but I really enjoy having those kind of seep in every once in a while. But for me, it's mostly movie soundtracks. It's that beautiful operatic music with scope.
I remember the name of the playlist on Spotify. It's called Northern Spirits.
Yeah, I find that I do a lot of my research too at nighttime when everybody is in bed already. I do a lot of things on my phone, and I know a lot of people don't operate that way. But for me, it's like when I'm in the bedroom and it's nighttime, that means it's quiet time. Nobody else is going to be coming to knock on the door to bother me unless it's an emergency. And then I can get the bulk of my research done, and then have a collection of sites or books that I need to order or go check out from the library. And then compile all that together. That way I'm not, the research is always the hardest part for me in compiling that into a semblance of organization that makes sense. Because, I love learning this stuff, but then I have to write about the stuff. If you're, you don't have to, but if you're doing it for like an SCA competition or something, they like to have their documentation of why you chose to implement this thing. And having at least that dedicated list of sites that I need to highlight and take excerpts from, it helps me keep organized when I'm going through to write the paper. I have chunks, and then I'll remember, okay, this was like the third section of the research because I remember because I, went to bed early that night or something. It helps kind of give that relative time where it's like, okay, I remember reading this and it was this night that I did that because that was the day that I was really tired because we went out or something. And that's how my brain compartmentalizes things. I don't know if that makes any sense at all. Yeah. So.
I think it's time for a last question. What kind of tools, can be either physical or digital, do you use to, keep yourself organized? Or do you use tools?
I don't use them for crafting, but for work, I have an app on my phone called Forest, where basically you tell your phone, I'm going to now concentrate for the next 20 minutes, and it will start growing a plant, and it will sort of brick your phone. So if you start then doing stuff on your phone, the plant will die. And, for me, it works because I feel really guilty if my digital plant dies. And then at the end of the day, you have a forest of all the little plants you planted with all the little concentration spikes.
For me, it's setting up systems. So that, like, for instance, when I'm researching a paper, I have Zotero, which helps me track the citations. I have Notion, which helps me to compile all of the information. I use GoodNotes and Readwise and Instapaper. All of those, when I read something, when I make highlights, all of that gets imported into Notion, and then I can organize from there. And I find that really helps me keep my brain moving in the right direction, because I'm not trying to run down all of this information that I read and where did I read it. I set things up automatically because I know myself.
Yeah, I have a whiteboard. It's like a big whiteboard with like little strips on it that have things broken down into sections. And so I'll have like time periods where it's like, okay, I want to have this video out around this time. I want to be working on a Lord of the Rings costume because September 2nd is when the Lord of the Rings series comes out and that kind of thing. And so I have it stationed up at my studio, and my partner is really great about, hey, this deadline is coming up, what you doing? Like, well, I just ran into this shiny new project that sounds like a lot of fun. It's like, we are refocused. He's really great about helping me redirect my attention back to the thing I should be working on. And it's good. Another person to check you back into where you should be, as long as it's done nicely.
Yeah, I must say my partner is a great wall where I can just throw ideas and most of them he's like, you already have too many hobbies, right? And then I just walk back, yeah, I know. I'll go work on the projects that I'm actually working on.
I think that one of the biggest realizations I've had is that I oftentimes don't need to start the new hobby. I just need to research it a little, watch a few YouTube videos on it, and that kind of gives me that feeling. So I like the idea of knowing a new hobby, but not necessarily always spending the $43,000 to acquire every single tool that you need for that hobby, only to drop it 6 months later. So I just kind of binge on YouTube videos on that hobby. Right now it's metal clay. So, I'm just watching a lot of videos on metal clay, and if it sinks in, then I might buy some metal clay and actually do some things. But I kind of give myself some time to date the idea. See if we're going to have just friends with benefits, or, exactly what kind of relationship I'm going to have with that new hobby.
Test drive the car before you buy
it. Yeah, but that is really smart. Impulse buying is one of the things that people with ADHD have problems with. So dating a new hobby is actually really good. I'm going to remember that. Thank you.
Yeah, I give myself some time, too, that if I've, been interested in this hobby and I've done enough research on it, and I still find myself, even after a few weeks of, I really would love to learn this hobby. If it's not just situational, if it's not just I see the Snickers bar on my way through the line in the grocery store, if I keep walking by that Snickers bar and I'm like, I still can't stop thinking about that Snickers bar. That's
I know I said last question with the previous question, but I just thought of one that's really related to this, and I'm actually really curious about this. If you guys don't go to a fabric store, do you go in with a plan, or do you just buy whatever you like?
A plan, but I can deviate from that plan if I find a really, really good deal.
Yeah, I typically go, if I'm going to the fabric store, it's because I'm going there for a purpose. When I walk into a thrift store or an estate sale, like, I asked this one in my recycling panel last year, do you let the project speak to you as far as what the fabric wants to become or the material, what it wants to become, or do you have a plan beforehand? It's like, no, especially because I work with a lot of recycled materials, I let the project tell me what it wants to become. Like, oh, it's got this particular design, and ooh, that would be so perfect for this. But then that leads to a whole lot of, I don't know if I classify myself as a hoarder, but I definitely have a problem with the amount of things that I need to organize. And, it's, yeah. So I typically don't go to the fact that I have a purpose to go there, because I will overspend. But if I've got a project of mine coming up in a few weeks, like my partner is having his Hobbit birthday. He's turning 32. And so we had planned on doing like a whole Hobbit day party. And so I walked in and I saw this like perfect, like autumnal looking fabric. And I'm like, oh my gosh, it'd be so perfect for a skirt, for a Hobbit costume. Like, nope, I am here for a purpose.
I need to walk into a yarn store with a purpose, because otherwise I'm coming out with all this yarn I'm never using.
Yeah, that's the thing for me. I had to teach myself to only go in with basically a grocery list of stuff that I need, and only come out with the with stuff on the list. Because if I buy fabric without a project in mind, I never use it. So I had to learn this the hard way, basically, because I've got a lot of unused fabric here, and I just don't have space for more.
I have this exact same thing with yarn. The only yarn I allow myself to buy is the yarn that is safe for my charity projects, because I will always have a project for those. But indeed, other yarns, they come in with a project or they do not come in.
Yeah, I think I'm going to start to implement to help myself take care of some of that fabric stashes. A lot of what I have is not like material kind of stuff. Is like polyester or things that with prints on it that aren't going to be something that I can use. But I do have a lot of ideas for smaller projects, things that I can put up as videos. So if I put it up as a video, it forces me to actually finish the tiny little project, and I think that doing, like, typically a lot of my projects take several months because they're so huge, they're so involved, they have so much research. Having those smaller little dopamine dumps, I think, are going to be great for helping me be like, I finished the thing. And so I'm going to be making it a goal for the upcoming year to just put out a video, a few minutes long maybe, of just something small. And yeah, it's not going to be something that anybody's really going to be like, oh my gosh, that was so cool. But
maybe it gives someone an idea just to start the same kind of project.
Yeah.
You know what? That's probably as a YouTuber, is to be able to inspire people to get excited about making things. Like, I think those comments are the best to read. Absolutely. It's like, you the thing. I'm like, I am so glad that I inspired you to do the thing, because I know how hard that is. So good luck. Truly.
I think I'm going to thank you all for your insights. I think we've gone on for long enough. So, to reiterate once again, where can people actually find you if they want to see more of your videos or stuff that you talked about?
Yeah, so you can find me on my YouTube channel under AltheaRizzo, or you can join us over on my Facebook group. It's called Sewing with ADHD. I occasionally post on Instagram, but not very often. You can find me on my website, AltheaRizzo.com, and I'm going to be offering some courses coming up. I currently have one out on fabric organization when you have ADHD. And this fall, I am starting my first master class for crafters, creative people with ADHD. So if that's something you're interested in, stop by the website and fill out an application. And I hope to see you around the webs.
You can find me on Twitch under LadyNieske. I stream 3 days a week where I do mostly crochet and other random craft projects. Also, if you like plushies going on adventures, you can also find me on Instagram under LadyNieske Plushies, where I take pictures of my huge plushie collection doing daily things or going on adventures.
They're absolutely adorable. Do check them for a small dopamine boost.
And I'm Kayla with McNerdyMakes. You can find me at McNerdyMakes on YouTube and Instagram. I've moved twice in the last 6 months, so I haven't put up a video recently, but I've got several things in the works, and it's just going to take that little bit of push to actually get through the editing. So, working on it.
And once again, I'm Mariska from MarisArmoury. You're on my channel now, so good luck finding it. I can also be found on Instagram, but I'm slightly less active there. And, I think I'm going to thank you guys all for watching. I hope it was useful. And if you have any more remarks or stuff you want to talk about, go leave a comment. Thank you all for watching, and see you guys next time.